As part of the refurbishment of the teak cockpit combing on Black Sheep, we removed all of the existing screws, leaving it just for the glue to hold the teak down. The traditional method of removing plugs is to drill a pilot hole and then use a screw into that pilot hole which pulls the plug out. This often leaves a broken edge around where the plug was though. This isn't a problem if you're removing a bit of wood, but if you're keeping it, then you need a cleaner hole. And I found a better method is to use a Forstner bit, which is a slightly wider diameter than the plug. Drill down with that and then use a smaller drill bit to go and find a screw.
The problem with the Forstner bit is they need solid wood to centre down onto. If you don't have that because maybe there's an old screw hole already there, then what you can do is drill through a thinner bit of wood using the Forstner bit and then use that as a guide, holding it over the hole where you want to recess. You can then take that guide away and go a bit deeper.
This bradawl made by Stanley is out of really tough metal and it's a really useful tool and it's perfect for digging out glue from the top of a screw. You just got to be very careful not to touch the edge of a hole. If it's a slot head, give it a little wiggle side to side to remove any last bits of glue and then very gently apply a bit of pressure and unwind the screw. Wood screws going into fiberglass can grip really tightly and it's inevitable that sometimes this will happen.
Oh, damn it.
Is that the head spinning?
That was it.
If this does happen, then rather than trying to drill out the actual screw itself with a big drill bit, I found it's better to get a very fine drill bit and drill a number of holes around the screw, and that gives you enough room to get a pair of pliers onto it and pull out the remains. This screw is holding down the new teak combing on the port side of Black Sheep, and it's been dressed especially for going into fiberglass.
So it's a standard screw with the thread still very sharp for biting into the wood. This is a wood screw which has been changed for going into fiberglass, and it's actually been sanded back or filed back so it doesn't grip as much into the fiberglass, and that'll mean it'll come out a lot easier.
Once all the screws are removed, we can go in a little bit deeper with the 15mm Forstner bit. This gives a bit more room for the plug to go into. And then we need to drill out where the screws themselves were, and I'm just marking off the length of the screw onto a drill bit so I don't go too deep. I ordered some 15mm plugs for this job, but they were more like 15.5, so every single plug had to be sanded down. And there's a lot to be said for getting a plug cutter and a Forstner bit which exactly match each other, and then you know your plug is going to really fit nicely into that hole. And a plug cutter is also a great way of using up old offcuts of wood. As always with epoxy, wet out first, then some thickened epoxy, and we're placing the plug so it lines up with the grain around it. And it should be a relaxed fit. Most of it can be done by hand, but you can just give it a little tap to send it home. With the epoxy fully cured, you can knock the tops off the plugs, and it's so important here not to be too greedy. And this is ideal, you're getting nice clean cuts through the plug. If you are too greedy, it'll often break off badly, like this. And that's a sign you need to go slower and more gradually. Sometimes they'll break badly even if you're doing it very patiently. And that's because there's a bad grain inside the plug. And the best thing to do then is to approach it from the opposite side, and you should then get a clean cut. If you do this, then it's unlikely it'll ever break below the surface of the teak surrounding it. It's really annoying when it does because you've just got to drill it out and start again. So let's try and find a better way of illustrating what I'm talking about with this. Imagine this is one of our plugs in between the masking tapes, and there's a distinct grain sloping from left up to right. So if we come in from the right side, it's likely to break along that grain and dive down below the surface of the surrounding timber. If we come in from the left hand side, then it'll always be cutting, or it'll break sloping upwards, which isn't a problem. This grain is a lot straighter, and if you're making your own plugs, this is the kind of wood you'd ideally be looking for. The teak doesn't absorb the glue readily, so the easiest way to tidy things up is a hard sand of 80 grit paper. We then sanded with 120, 180 and then finally 240 grit paper before the first of many coats of varnish.